Welcome to Werewolf Shifter Romance Audiobook written by Jane Collection. The air practically hummed with magic under the full moon's glow. It was a night painted in silver, meant for sacred promises and whispered hopes. My heart, a tiny bird, fluttered inside my chest. I stood at the edge of the clearing, watching my pack, the Black Hollow shifters. Everyone looked up at the big, bright moon like it was telling them secrets. But my eyes? They were glued to Andrew. He was the alpha, our leader, tall and strong like an ancient oak tree. His dark hair, usually neat, was messed up just a little by the wind. And his eyes, warm like honey, looked so powerful. I felt it deep in my bones, a pull, a hum, a song that only he and I could hear. It was our fated bond, you know? It had been singing to me since I was a little pup. Tonight, I just knew it was our time. We'd stand together, and he'd make me his, right in front of everyone. A sweet, quiet joy bloomed in my chest like a flower opening in the sun. Then, Andrew turned his head. His eyes, those warm, honey-colored pools, swept over the crowd. And just like that, they found mine. Across the clearing, his gaze locked onto me. A soft, tiny smile touched his lips. It was quick, almost a secret. But it felt like a promise. It felt like everything. My breath caught. This was it. This was my future. This was what I had waited for because deep down I believed in our destiny. But then, as quickly as it came, that warm smile faded. A tiny shadow like a cloud crossing the moon flickered in his eyes. It was just for a second, a hint of worry or something else before he turned back to the elders. I told myself it was nothing, just alpha stuff. But a tiny, cold pebble of doubt dropped into my heart. That tiny pebble of doubt? It grew. Days later, the sweet memory of Andrew's smile still tried to warm me, but then a strange chill started to creep into our pack. I kept hearing hushed voices, like secrets trying to hide in the wind. Words like Kaelin and old ways floated around, laced with a tension that made my fur prickle. Kaelin, a big, scary alpha from another territory, used to be just a story. Now, his name felt heavy, like a dark storm cloud. Andrew, too, felt different. His usual strong, happy vibe was gone. Instead, his face always looked worried, like he was carrying a heavy stone. He spent all his time in quiet talks with the elders, his focus on pack problems, not on me. I tried to tell myself it was just alpha work because leaders have big jobs. I thought Andrew was strong enough to fix anything. Even so, a tiny tremor started in my heart. I was walking by the big fire pit where some of the younger, wilder shifters hung out. I saw them looking at me. Their eyes, usually friendly, narrowed like angry cats. They quickly looked away when I got close. As I moved past, a low, mean sound reached my ears. Omega. Just that one word. It was barely a whisper, but the way they said it, it felt like a slap, like I was nothing. I froze. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. Truth be told, it felt like a warning. Because of that mean whisper and Andrew's growing distance, I needed comfort. I went to my grandmother, Rebecca. She lived in a small, old cabin, tucked away at the edge of our lands. Rebecca was a lore keeper, which meant she knew all the old stories and magic. Her cabin always smelled like dry herbs and old books, a comforting hug for my worried heart. Today, though, the cabin felt different. Heavier. The quiet felt too deep. Rebecca, with her wise old eyes, looked right through me. She didn't give me easy answers about Andrew. Instead, her gnarled fingers, rough from working with plants, gently touched my hand. "The moon has many faces, little one," she murmured, her voice like dry leaves rustling. "And destiny? It's never a straight path." She talked about strength deep inside me, power waiting to wake up. Then, from a secret spot, Rebecca pulled out a big leather book. It looked very old, its cover worn smooth. Strange, glowing symbols filled its pages. She didn't open it, just held it. It hummed softly in the air. "Your blood sings to the moon, Selena," she said, her eyes looking deep into mine. A song older than memory. I was confused. I wanted to know about Andrew, about the pack, not riddles. Still, I trusted her. Before I left, Rebecca put a small, carved wooden trinket in my hand. It was warm and smooth. "A good luck charm," she said, but her eyes held a sad secret. The trinket felt strangely alive against my skin. It was like a tiny whisper from a past I didn't know, hinting at a destiny much bigger and scarier than I could ever dream. What followed was a feeling that the world was about to change and I was somehow part of it. The air practically crackled with a nervous, buzzing energy under the full moon. It wasn't the usual happy buzz of pack gatherings. My heart hammered, a frantic drum against my ribs, but I tried to tell it to calm down. This was it. Andrew stepped forward, his tall shape dark against the bright moon. I held my breath, a silent prayer forming on my lips. My entire body leaned towards him, ready. But he didn't turn to me. Instead, his eyes, which usually felt warm like sunshine, were cold and distant. They looked right past me, landing on another she-wolf, Lyra. She was pretty, strong, a beta. My stomach dropped. A cold, heavy stone settled inside me. The pack fell silent, like everyone stopped breathing at once. I watched, frozen, as Andrew walked to Lyra. He reached out his hand, and it looked so gentle, so tender, as it touched her neck. My mind screamed, "No." My vision blurred, and then it happened. His fangs, sharp and gleaming in the moonlight, extended. They sank into her skin. A soft, sickening pop echoed in the sudden, profound quiet. It was like a physical punch to my gut. My world didn't just crack, it shattered into a million tiny pieces. The sound of the mark, that terrible final sound, ripped through me. It felt like my own skin was tearing, my soul ripping apart. My lungs burned, suddenly empty of air. Murmurs started, low and shocked, like bees buzzing in a disturbed hive. Pitying glances, quick and sharp, flickered towards me, then quickly away. Humiliation, hot and searing, washed over me, hotter than any fever. Andrew, my fated mate, the one I had waited for, had publicly, irrevocably chosen another. He had marked her, right in front of everyone. My dream, my entire future, lay in ruins at my feet, trampled and broken. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My primal instinct screamed one thing: run. I ran blindly. My feet pounded against the earth, but I didn't feel the pain. A choked sob tore from my throat, raw and ragged. The forest swallowed me whole, its familiar embrace now a suffocating shroud. The trees, usually comforting friends, seemed to press in, judging me. Andrew's distant, tormented howl, a sound of raw anguish that mirrored my own, faded behind me. It was swallowed by the vast, indifferent night, leaving me utterly alone. My heart was a raw, bleeding wound, bleeding not just from rejection, but from the brutal severing of a bond I had believed unbreakable. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't outrun the feeling of being discarded. Soon after, the pack's shocked murmurs died out, replaced by the chilling silence of my own despair. I ran until my legs burned, until my lungs ached, until the last bit of moonlight was swallowed by the dense canopy above. I just kept running because staying felt like dying. Days bled into weeks, a blur of aimless wandering through the forgotten edges of the territory. My world had shrunk to the next berry bush, the next trickle of water. I moved like a ghost, my body aching, my spirit utterly depleted. The wilderness, usually a vibrant tapestry of life, now felt vast and indifferent, mirroring the gaping emptiness inside me. The agonizing memory of Andrew's betrayal was a constant companion, a bitter echo in the silence of my exile. It was always there, a cold knot in my stomach, a sharp pain behind my eyes. I survived on meager berries and what little game I could catch, my instincts dulled by grief. I would collapse at night, hidden beneath thick ferns, tears tracing cold paths down my dirt-streaked cheeks. I wished for oblivion, for the pain to just stop. More importantly, I wished I could erase the image of Andrew marking Lyra, because it haunted my every waking moment, and my dreams too. I just needed a place where the crushing weight of my pain could be truly private. One twilight, as the last bit of sunlight bled from the sky, painting the clouds in bruised purples and grays, I stumbled upon an old, overgrown cabin. It was Rebecca's long-abandoned home, its windows dark and empty like blind eyes, its porch sagging under the weight of time. The air around it smelled of damp wood, decaying leaves, and a faint, sweet scent of dried lavender that clung stubbornly to the old timbers. Its silence was a stark reflection of my own desolation, a place where no one would find me, no one would witness my pain, no one would judge. I collapsed onto the porch, the rough wood digging into my skin, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My muscles screamed in protest, but I didn't care. I was utterly spent. As I lay there, utterly exhausted and despairing, a faint, inexplicable thrumming sensation began deep within me. It was subtle at first, a low vibration, then a strange warmth spreading from the intricately carved wooden trinket Rebecca had given me. It was still clutched in my hand, a small, smooth comfort. It felt like a tiny, distant heartbeat, a subtle echo of the moon's power, a counterpoint to the crushing emptiness that had become my world. Maybe it was fate, or maybe just the last flicker of my own strength. But something was stirring. That thrumming sensation, it didn't stop. Instead, it grew stronger, pulling me from the depths of my despair. It was a surge of ancient power, raw and untamed, like a wild river breaking free. Eventually, it felt like it was triggered by the profound emotional pain I had endured, and by being so close to Rebecca's house, a place soaked in generations of lore-keeper magic. My senses exploded. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves became an overwhelming symphony of aromas, each distinct, vibrant, telling a story I couldn't quite understand. The distant rustle of a squirrel in the undergrowth, the soft sigh of the wind through the pines. They were impossibly clear, almost deafening. It was a terrifying, exhilarating cacophony, a world suddenly rendered in blinding, overwhelming detail, because my body was changing. Panic flared, sharp and cold, as my body began to tremble, shaking like a leaf in a storm. This was not normal. This was more. I stumbled inside the cabin, driven by an inexplicable pull, a desperate need to understand what was happening to me. The air inside was thick with the scent of old books and dried herbs, a comforting familiarity amidst the terrifying newness of my senses. My gaze was drawn to a loose floorboard near the hearth. A faint, almost imperceptible glow was coming from beneath it, like a tiny star trapped underground. With trembling fingers, I pried it open. In that moment, my breath caught. Nestled in the darkness lay a leather-bound grimoire, its cover worn smooth, its pages brittle with age. As my fingers brushed against its surface, a jolt of energy, cold and electric, shot through me. It was Rebecca's grimoire, the book my grandmother had shown me, now radiating a palpable presence. I pulled it out, clutching it to my chest. The grimoire's pages seemed to hum, whispering of forgotten magic, of ancient bloodlines, and of a destiny tied to the last moon. I was still reeling from the overwhelming sensory input, but a terrifying yet undeniable sense of purpose began to bloom in my chest. This book held answers to the bewildering power awakening within me, answers to a life I never knew existed. Just like that, I was locked into a new reality, bewildering and dangerous, but undeniably my own. What's worse, I knew I couldn't turn back. Rebecca's cabin, once just an old, quiet place, now felt like a secret fortress. It was my sanctuary, a safe spot against the crazy new world that had just swallowed me whole. Days blurred into a busy mix of reading and trying out new things. I spent hours with Rebecca's grimoire. Its old rough pages felt like history under my fingers. They had tiny, spidery writing and strange drawings. They showed wolves changing their shapes and pictures of plants with weird names. Not only that, but some pages had symbols that glowed softly like tiny stars trapped in the paper. I felt so close to my grandmother, Rebecca, through that book. It was like she was right there, teaching me, guiding me. Her voice, soft and wise, seemed to whisper in my mind. The grimoire talked about the last moon prophecy. It said someone special would come, someone who could help the pack. I wondered if that was me. Truth be told, a shiver ran down my spine because the idea was both exciting and really scary. I practiced the breathing lessons the book showed. It was hard. My senses were super loud now. The smell of wet earth, the rustle of leaves, the tiny sounds of bugs. Everything was too much. It was like a million tiny noises all at once. I had to learn how to make them quiet, how to just hear what I needed to hear. As a result, I spent hours just sitting still, trying to listen, to feel the forest without getting overwhelmed. It was like learning to breathe all over again. The grimoire also had stories, old stories about our kind, about shifters. They talked about how we came to be, how the moon gave us our power. They spoke of the balance, how the human and wolf parts needed to live together side by side. More importantly, they warned about what happens when that balance breaks. My heart felt a strange mix of wonder and worry. This was magic, real and powerful, and it was tied to me. One day, I found a page with a drawing of a glowing stone, shaped like a wolf. Its eyes were tiny, bright moons. Underneath, it talked about the Moonstone Amulet. It said the amulet could help a shifter control their power, especially during the big changes. It also said it could connect them to the ancestors, to all the lore keepers who came before. Because of that, I felt a deep pull to find it. I wondered if Rebecca had hidden it somewhere in the cabin waiting for me. Still, the grimoire had other, darker pages. They warned about shadow blight. It was a kind of evil magic that could twist a shifter's soul, making them lose their minds. It turned them into monsters like the rogue I'd seen. She didn't know what scared her more, the idea of having so much power, or the thought of something like the shadow blight existing. It was all so much to take in, but I knew I had to learn. I had to understand. My heart felt heavy, but also strong, because I knew this was my path now. The air suddenly went cold even though it was a warm day. A chilling howl ripped through the quiet of the forest. It wasn't like any wolf howl I'd ever heard. This one was full of a mean, hungry feeling that made my fur prickle. It was the same sound that had sent a shiver down my spine before, the sound of the rogue. As if pulled by a string, I felt myself moving towards it, a strange mix of fear and a desperate need to understand. The air grew heavy, thick with a terrible smell. It was like rotten meat mixed with something sharp and wrong. My nose burned. I pushed through thick bushes, my heart thumping like a drum. And then I saw it. In a small, dark clearing, there it was, the rogue shifter. It was huge, bigger than any wolf I'd ever seen. Its fur was matted and dark, like it was covered in old blood and dirt. Its eyes glowed with a mindless, scary light, like burning coals. It was tearing at a dead deer, its movements wild and savage, not like a normal wolf at all. It was a monster. I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs, so loud I thought the whole forest could hear it. Terror stole my breath. This wasn't just a lost animal. This was something evil, something twisted. Without thinking, my new powers flared. A hot, protective wave spread from the wooden trinket Rebecca had given me, the one in my pocket. It felt like a tiny shield, pushing back against the rogue's dark energy. I wanted to run, to scream, but a deeper, wilder part of me, the wolf part, rooted me to the spot. It was defiance, pure and strong. Just then, a blur of amber and silver streaked through the trees. Andrew. He was in his wolf form, huge and powerful. His fur was the color of moonlight on snow, and his eyes, usually warm, were burning with a tormented fury. He let out a deep, guttural snarl, a sound that shook the ground. He launched himself at the rogue. The rogue, surprised, let out a frustrated whine, a high, thin sound that was almost pathetic. A beat later, it vanished into the shadows, melting away as silently as it had appeared. Andrew, still in his wolf form, turned his massive head. His amber eyes, filled with a raw, primal concern, met mine. There was no clear recognition, just that deep, worried look. He nudged me gently with his muzzle, a soft, warm push against my side. It was a silent reassurance, a comfort I hadn't realized I desperately needed. Then, he turned and disappeared back into the forest, as quickly as he had come. He left me shaken, my body trembling, but alive. I was horrified by the rogue's twisted nature, but also bewildered by Andrew's sudden appearance and his tormented demeanor. It was a complex mix of lingering hurt, reluctant gratitude, and a growing sense of confusion about his true feelings. Days later, Andrew appeared at the edge of Rebecca's property again. He looked tired, his face etched with a deep weariness that went beyond just being sleepy. It was like he carried a heavy secret. He was in human form, his clothes rough and practical. He didn't say sorry for what he did under the moon. He didn't explain why he marked Lyra. Instead, he just started talking about the forest. "You're out here alone," he said, his voice rough, like stones rubbing together. It wasn't his usual alpha voice full of warmth. "The rogue is bolder now. It's dangerous. You need to know how to survive." He taught me how to move through the thick bushes without making a sound, like a shadow. He showed me how to find animal tracks, not just deer, but bigger, scarier ones. More importantly, he taught me how to listen to the wind, how to smell the air, because the wind could carry secrets, telling you who was near. His lessons were often quiet. He'd just point or make a small gesture, and I had to figure it out. I still felt raw from his betrayal. I wanted to scream at him, to demand answers. Why? Why her? Why me? But something in his eyes, a deep sadness, a quiet pain, stopped me. I saw a vulnerability there, a crack in his strong alpha mask that I hadn't seen before. I absorbed his teachings because I knew I needed them. I needed to be strong. As the wind shifted, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, I felt a strange connection to him, even through my hurt. He started talking about Kaelin. His jaw tightened when he said the name. "He's stirring up trouble," Andrew muttered, his voice laced with a bitter resentment. "He's feeding on fear, twisting the old ways." He explained that Kaelin wanted power, that he thought the pack was weak. He said Kaelin was making shifters turn against each other, making them scared. Because of that, the pack was divided, like a broken family. Andrew looked tired, so tired, because he was trying to hold everything together. Before either could speak, Andrew suddenly stood up. "I have to go," he said, his voice flat. He didn't look at me. He just turned and melted into the shadows of the forest, as silently as he had arrived. He left me with more questions than answers, and a chilling feeling that the pack's problems ran far deeper than I had ever imagined. Andrew was my first, complicated ally in this dangerous new reality. The true scope of Kaelin's insidious influence was beginning to emerge, raising the stakes beyond just my personal survival. What followed was the terrifying realization that this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the whole pack. The air around the main pack territory felt heavy, thick with a fear I could almost taste. It clung to the ancient pines, seeped into the damp earth, and tightened around my own heart. Driven by a new, fierce protective instinct, a feeling that pulsed with the moonstone amulet's warmth against my skin, I ventured closer. I stayed hidden in the dense cover of the trees, my heightened senses absorbing every detail, every hushed whisper. What followed was a sight that made my stomach churn. The pack was a shadow of its former self, fractured and fearful. Faces, once open and trusting, were now etched with worry lines, their eyes darting nervously. Shifters moved with hunched shoulders, their usual confident strides replaced by a wary shuffle. I heard low, suspicious conversations, like secrets trying to hide in the rustling leaves. Kalen's followers, easy to spot by their sneering faces and cold eyes, made no effort to hide their hostility. Their glares, sharp as daggers, cut through the air whenever they passed a loyalist. Not only that, but I overheard desperate whispers about another sighting of the rogue. It was closer than ever, they said, its monstrous presence a chilling weight on their spirits. Emergency council meetings were called with increasing frequency, their very name hinting at a deepening crisis, a pack falling apart. My heart ached with a profound sorrow for my former home, for the community I had once belonged to. It was like watching a beloved family slowly crumble. I realized the threat wasn't just the terrifying rogue, a monster lurking in the shadows. Instead, it was internal, insidious. Kalen's ambition, a poison seeping into the very heart of the pack because he wanted power more than anything. The pressure was building, palpable and suffocating, because fear was a weapon he wielded with terrifying skill. As I watched, a flicker of movement caught my eye. One of Kalen's closest followers, a burly male with eyes like chips of ice, turned his head. His gaze, sharp and cold, locked onto my hiding spot. He didn't smile. He didn't growl. But the sheer animosity radiating from him was a physical blow. He knew I was there. What's worse, his lips curled into a slow, chilling smirk, a silent promise of trouble. I knew then that I was no longer just an observer, I was a perceived threat. The air grew heavy, thick with a nauseating, acrid stench. It was the smell of decay mixed with something profoundly unnatural, something that made my wolf prickle with alarm. Guided by a chilling, almost forgotten entry in Rebecca's grimoire, a passage warning of corrupted magic and twisted symbols, I ventured deep into a secluded part of the forest. The grimoire had hinted at a place where darkness could be made. Eventually, I found it. Nestled in a hidden ravine, cloaked by ancient, gnarled trees, lay a dark, blood-stained ritual site. Crude, twisted symbols, vaguely reminiscent of our own pack sigils but horribly distorted, were etched into the damp earth. Remnants of a horrifying sacrifice lay scattered around. My breath hitched. This was enough. Not full, undeniable proof that Kalen did it, but enough to confirm his malevolence, enough to scream of the unnatural nature of the rogue. No matter how hard she tried, Selena couldn't deny the chill that ran down her spine. A wave of nausea washed over me, followed by a surge of raw, unadulterated rage. This wasn't just a rogue. This was a perversion, a deliberate act of dark magic. As if summoned, the rogue's lingering presence, a cold, malevolent aura, seemed to brush against me. And just like that, my power flared. It was different this time. My bones shifted, my muscles bunched, and with a gasp, I found myself on all fours. My fur, the color of twilight, shimmered in the dappled light. I was in my wolf form, a controlled partial shift, my senses amplified to an unbearable degree. The world exploded with information, every scent, every sound, every subtle energy current screaming at me. My power was undeniable, terrifying, and exhilarating, because it confirmed the grimoire's prophecies. I raced back to Andrew, my heart pounding with a desperate urgency. The horrifying images of the ritual site seared into my mind. I found him near the Alpha's den, his face etched with the same weariness I'd seen before. I shifted back to human, the process still jarring, and confronted him with my suspicions, the words tumbling out in a raw, desperate torrent. Kalen, he's doing this. He's making the rogue. Andrew listened, his amber eyes clouded with doubt. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture of deep frustration. Selena, without proof, concrete proof, he rasped. Kalen, he's Pack. He wouldn't. The painful rift between us widened, a chasm of disbelief and lingering hurt. Still, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, a desperate hope because he wanted to believe me. The game had changed. The stakes were no longer just survival. They were personal, a fight against a betrayal that threatened to consume them all.
The rogue's attacks escalated dramatically. It was no longer just a beast, it was a weapon wielded by an unseen hand. One moonless night, the screams of slaughtered livestock ripped through the silence, closer to the den than ever before. The air filled with the sickening scent of blood, because the rogue wasn't just killing for food, it was killing to terrorize. Soon after, a young hunter, barely more than a pup, was found gravely injured, his body bearing the unmistakable, twisted marks of the rogue's savage fury. His whimpers echoed in the den, a sound that tore at my soul. The attacks pushed Marcus, our aged alpha, and me to our breaking point. My face was perpetually etched with exhaustion and despair. My usual alpha strength, the confidence I projected, felt diminished by the relentless pressure. We held emergency councils, our voices low and grim, but no solution seemed to emerge. The pack was paralyzed by fear, by the chilling knowledge that this creature was not just a threat, but a calculated, malevolent force. On the other hand, I couldn't shake Selena's words, her desperate pleas, her terrifying vision of the ritual site. I knew, deep down, that Kian was behind it. He was manipulating the rogue, using it to sow terror and destabilize the pack. My frustration boiled over. Why couldn't I prove it? Why couldn't I make Marcus see? My fierce protective instinct for the pack surged, because I felt their fear, their despair. That night, exhausted, desperate, and haunted by the recent attacks, I found myself walking towards Rebecca's cabin. My feet carried me there without conscious thought. I found Selena by the dying embers of the hearth, the grimoire open in her lap, its pages glowing faintly in the dim light. She looked up, her eyes, the color of a stormy sky, filled with a wisdom that both awed and terrified me. I didn't speak of my pain or my regret. Instead, I just looked at her, my silver eyes pleading. You feel it, don't you? I rasped, my voice thick with unspoken anguish. The rogue. It's different now, stronger. She nodded, her gaze unwavering. I saw the understanding in her eyes, the chilling connection to the rogue's malevolent presence. It was a silent plea for her unique insights, for her help. I was desperate, and in my desperation, I finally began to truly lean on her, because she was the only one who seemed to grasp the true nature of this darkness. What followed was a desperate hope that she held the key to our survival, a hope that burned against the encroaching shadows. The air in Rebecca's cabin was thick with unspoken words, with the crushing weight of my desperation. I knelt before Selena, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. My gaze, filled with a raw, vulnerable plea, was fixed on her. She didn't know what scared her more, the thought of losing my pack or the thought of losing her. From beneath my tunic, I pulled a small leather pouch, its contents clinking softly. My hand trembled as I poured them into her palm. The moonstone amulet. Its dark, polished stone seemed to absorb the dim firelight, pulsing with a faint internal glow, like a captured heartbeat. This is the moonstone of Eldoria, I rasped, my voice raw with emotion, thick with the shame of my past actions. It belonged to Rebecca's line, the lorekeepers. It's meant for the last moon. My hand, scarred and calloused from countless battles, covered hers, my grip strong and reassuring. In that moment, I felt the chasm between us, the one I had created, begin to close. Selena, I pleaded, my voice thick with a vulnerability I had never dared to show before. We need you. I need you. You are our only hope. It was a moment of profound trust, a raw, desperate plea that bridged the chasm of our past. I knew I had broken her, but I hoped desperately that she could still save us. Selena looked at the amulet, then at me. Her eyes, the color of a stormy sky, searched mine. I saw the pain I had caused, but also a fierce, unyielding strength. I felt the immense power of the amulet surge through her veins, a comforting hum against her skin, harmonizing with the ancient rhythm of her own heartbeat. The weight of my words, my absolute faith in her, was overwhelming, terrifying, yet I saw a new resolve bloom in her eyes. She accepted the amulet, fastening its silver chain around her neck. As the bond pulsed, I felt it, clear as day, a connection rekindling, stronger than before. Her goal was now explicitly clear: to save the pack, to confront Kalen's darkness, whatever the cost. She felt empowered, validated, and deeply connected to me, but also overwhelmed by the terrifying responsibility that now rested upon her shoulders. Our bond, once shattered, began to mend, deepening into a true, undeniable partnership. Just like that, everything changed.
The moonstone amulet, now a constant, warm presence against my skin, pulsed with a sudden, fierce energy. It wasn't just a hum. It was a warning. A horrifying vision ripped through my mind, sharp and visceral. The full horror of Kalen's shadow blight ritual. I saw the twisted symbols, crude and dark, drawn in blood on the damp earth. I saw the agonizing faces of two young shifters, barely more than pups, their lives extinguished in a grotesque parody of sacrifice. It was a deliberate, calculated act of pure evil because Kalen wanted to show his power. "Andrew," I cried, the vision still searing my mind, the words tearing from my throat. "The young ones! Kalen! He's sacrificing them!" My voice trembled, but my wolf pressed forward, demanding action. Andrew's face went grim. He rallied a small group of loyalists, their faces etched with a desperate resolve. Guided by my chilling vision, they raced through the forest, their hearts pounding with a desperate urgency. Soon after, they found the bodies near a secluded clearing, just as I had seen. The young shifters, their lives brutally extinguished, their forms desecrated, lay in a pool of their own blood. Beside them, drawn in blood on the damp earth, was Kalen's twisted sigil, a clear, horrifying declaration of war. The faint, lingering scent of Kalen's closest lieutenant, a smell I now recognized as cold and cruel, was unmistakable. This was undeniable, horrifying proof of Kalen's monstrous betrayal and open treason. A low, guttural growl ripped from Andrew's throat, a sound of such pure, unadulterated rage that it seemed to shake the very trees. His silver eyes blazed with a cold, lethal fury. The pack's grief, now mixed with a burning, righteous anger, was a palpable force. This was no longer just about power. It was about vengeance, about justice for the innocent. What followed was a silence that roared with unspoken threats. The den was a place of grim resolve, the air heavy with unspoken grief and a chilling certainty of what was to come. Marcus, our aged alpha, his face a mask of stony sorrow, made a heartbreaking decision. "Kalen's poison runs too deep," he rasped, his voice thick with pain. "We cannot risk another betrayal." He confined the entire pack to the immediate vicinity, effectively placing them under house arrest. It was a desperate measure, but a necessary one, because Kalen's treachery had spread like a disease. In the sacred, ancient Hearthstone cavern, bathed in the soft, eerie glow of the moonstone amulet, we gathered. Andrew, Marcus, Lyra, Ronan, and I. I was in my powerful wolf form now, a controlled, deliberate shift. My midnight fur blended with the shadows, but my eyes, filled with a fierce determination, burned brightly. I outlined my terrifying plan. "We will confront Kalen and the rogue," I stated, my voice a low, resonant growl that filled the cavern. "And then, at the height of the battle, I will enact the cleansing ritual. I will draw the blight's essence into myself." Andrew's protest was immediate, a raw, guttural cry of anguish. His face was a mask of torment, his silver eyes pleading. "No, Selena, there must be another way. I will not let you do this." But my resolve was unyielding. I met his gaze, my own filled with a gentle, heartbreaking resolve. "There is no other way, Andrew," I whispered, my voice surprisingly calm. "This is why I am the last moon. This is my destiny, my burden." The choice was made, forged in the moonlight of my transformation, in the crucible of our shared battles, in the depths of our unbreakable love. As the sky darkened, painting the cavern entrance in hues of bruised purple, Andrew and I stood together. We shared a tender, desperate kiss, a silent promise of enduring love amidst the encroaching darkness. It was a farewell to the innocence we had lost, a welcome to the harsh, uncertain future we faced together. Then, with a final shared glance, we parted, each to our role in the coming, inevitable conflict. The stage was set. The scent of pine and fear filled the air. My heart skipped a beat, then pounded with a fierce resolve.
The night exploded. It was like the forest itself screamed. The corrupted Stonecrest pack, twisted by the shadow blight, hit us like a tidal wave. They weren't just angry, they were mindless. Their eyes glowed with a sick, hungry light. Their howls were a chilling song of rage and pain. I fought, my muscles burning, my fangs snapping. My silver fur was already matted with sweat and grime, because I was pushing myself harder than ever before. I had set traps, hidden pits with sharp stakes because I thought I was smart. They worked for a bit. The blighted shifters fell, screaming. But they just kept coming. Their numbers were endless, like ants from a disturbed nest. They didn't care about getting hurt. They just kept pushing, pushing, pushing. Not only that, but their strength was wrong, unnatural. They were like broken toys, but strong ones. The Black Hollow warriors, my pack, fought like lions. They were brave, so brave. Their teeth and claws tore at the blighted flesh. Their howls of defiance, raw and desperate, cut through the night. I was everywhere, a silver blur of fury, the Alpha's fang in my hand. Ronan, our war leader, fought beside me, a huge, grizzled bear against the tide. Marcus, our old Alpha, his face grim, stood strong because he wouldn't let his pack fall. But then, it was too much. The Stonecrest were too many. Their corrupted strength was too great. Slowly, like a wall crumbling, our lines broke. We were pushed back towards the Hearthstone Cavern, our last safe place. The air was thick. It smelled of blood, of death, of that awful sweet smell of corrupted magic. It made my stomach clench. I could feel the fear of my pack, a cold wave washing over me. I glanced back, my heart a cold, hard knot. Selena. She was waiting near the cavern, hidden, agonizing, because her moment hadn't come yet. I just had to buy her more time. Every step back felt like a failure, like I was letting her down. What's worse, I could feel the blight's power growing, like a dark storm cloud getting closer, because it was drawn to the overwhelming darkness of the fight. I just hoped she was ready. I hoped she was safe.
The battle raged at the cavern entrance, a brutal, desperate dance of teeth and claws. I could hear Andrew's guttural cry of fury, a sound that tore at my soul. Ronan's defiant snarl, Marcus's roar of pain. Each sound was a fresh stab of agony in my own heart. I longed to join them, to throw myself into the fight, but I knew my role. Their survival, the survival of our pack, depended on me, on this ritual. I stood before the hearthstone, its ancient power humming softly. Rebecca's staff was clutched tight in my paw, its gnarled wood warm against my fur. I chanted the ancient words, weaving a tapestry of sound and energy, of light and shadow. The hearthstone pulsed with a stronger light, its ancient power awakening, responding to my call. It felt like the very heart of the earth was beating with me. But then, a wave of searing black energy, cold and sharp, slammed into me. It was a focused blast of Kalen's corrupted magic. He had broken through Andrew's desperate defenses. Pain, white hot and excruciating, ripped through me, tearing a choked cry from my lips. I was thrown back from the hearthstone, my body hitting the cold stone floor with a sickening thud. Rebecca's staff clattered from my nerveless fingers, its light flickering, threatening to die. The connection, the ritual, faltered. Kalen's triumphant, mocking laughter filled the cavern. It echoed off the stone walls, cold and cruel. I could smell his foul, corrupted scent, like burnt flesh and bitter herbs. I could feel his malevolent presence looming over me, a dark shadow blotting out all light. I lay there, trembling, my vision blurring. I had failed. My power wasn't enough. My terrifying sacrifice would be in vain. The sliver of the rogue's darkness within me, that cold, chilling presence, seemed to awaken. It whispered, "Succumb." It promised an end to the pain, the fear, the suffering. It wanted me to give up, because it wanted to take over. I lay on the cold stone floor, my body shaking, my vision blurring. The darkness pressed in, heavy and suffocating. The Blight's insidious whispers were louder now, a chorus of seductive voices. "Join us," they hissed, slithering into my mind. "Embrace the darkness. Let go of the pain. You will be powerful. You will be eternal." It felt like a warm blanket, promising peace. I was so tired, so broken. I confronted my deepest fear right there, that I was not strong enough, that my love and sacrifice were useless, that I was still just the discarded, powerless Omega, destined to be broken. The fragment of the rogue's darkness within me stirred, eager to merge with the overwhelming Blight. It wanted to claim me, to make me one with the corruption. Hope dwindled, a tiny flickering flame in a vast, encroaching darkness. I was at my lowest point, a raw, exposed nerve. Still, I knew the truth. If I gave up, everything was lost. But then, through the pain, through the despair, I felt a touch, a warmth, a familiar presence. Lyra. The old she-wolf was kneeling beside me, her ancient eyes, usually so sharp and wise, now filled with a fierce, unwavering determination. Her gnarled hand gently touched my cheek, a grounding force amidst the swirling chaos. "Get up, child," Lyra whispered, her voice surprisingly strong, cutting through the insidious whispers of the Blight. It was like a splash of cold water waking me up. "Get up and fight. You are the last moon. You are Rebecca's granddaughter. You are the hope of our pack. Do not let him win." Lyra's words, her unwavering faith, ignited a tiny spark of defiance in my fading spirit. It was a fragile spark, almost imperceptible, but it was there. I looked at the hearthstone. Its light was dim, but it wasn't gone. I felt the faint, steady pulse of the moonstone amulet against my skin, a quiet reassurance. I remembered Andrew's promise, "I am with you always." My internal flaw, that deep doubt in my own worth, was challenged to its core. Lyra's belief, Andrew's love, and Rebecca's legacy provided the strength to push back. This was my crucible, my hardest test, and I would not break. What followed was a surge of raw, unyielding power, because I was the last moon, and I would fight. The whispers of the Blight, cold and sharp, still clawed at my mind. They promised peace. They promised power. They promised an end to the burning pain that ripped through my body. But then, Lyra's voice, surprisingly strong, cut through the darkness. "Get up, child," she'd rasped, her gnarled hand a warm anchor on my cheek. "You are the last moon. You are Rebecca's granddaughter. You are the hope of our pack. Do not let him win." Her words were like a splash of icy water, shocking me awake. They ignited a tiny, desperate spark of defiance in my fading spirit, because her faith was a fire I could cling to. I clung to the warmth of the moonstone amulet, its pulse a faint, steady beat against my skin. I remembered Andrew's promise. "I am with you always." The pack's desperate hope, their terrified faces, flashed in my mind. I couldn't give up. I wouldn't. With a supreme effort, drawing on reserves of strength I hadn't known I possessed, I pushed myself to my feet. My body screamed in protest, every muscle a raw, burning agony. My vision swam, blurring the cavern into a swirling mess of shadows and dim light. But I would not yield. I would not let Kaelin destroy everything I held dear. My eyes, once clouded by despair, now burned with a cold, steady fire, a righteous fury that pushed back the pain. I stumbled towards Rebecca's staff, lying uselessly on the cold stone floor. Its familiar weight in my trembling hand was a comfort, a link to my grandmother's wisdom. It pulsed with a quiet, ancient power, a living extension of my will. As the wind shifted, carrying the scent of blood and fear from the battle outside, I faced Kalen. He stood triumphant at the cavern entrance, his monstrous form a dark silhouette against the flickering torchlight. The rogue, a hulking, slavering shadow, stood at his side, its eyes burning with a mindless hunger. Kalen's face was twisted in a mask of pure hatred, a sneer on his lips. "You thought you could defeat me, little wolf?" he hissed, his voice a venomous rasp that scraped against my raw nerves. "You thought your pathetic ritual, your grandmother's sentimental magic, could stand against the power I now wield?" He gestured, and a blast of black energy, crackling with malevolent power, shot towards me. It felt like a physical fist aiming to crush me. Without thinking, I raised Rebecca's staff. I poured all my remaining strength, all my will, all my love for my pack into a shield of pure white light. The two opposing forces met with a deafening roar, a sound that shook the very cavern. The air crackled with raw, untamed magic, like a storm trapped underground. The light held. It shimmered, pushing back the black tendrils of the blight. A look of surprised fury crossed Kalen's face. He had underestimated me. He had underestimated the power of the last moon, the strength of Rebecca's legacy, the unwavering love of a pack united. Just like that, the tide began to turn, because my will was stronger than his malice. I pressed my advantage, pushing the shimmering shield of light forward. It was like pushing against a solid wall of darkness, but I wouldn't stop. Step by agonizing step, I forced Kalen and the rogue back towards the tunnel entrance. The strain was immense. My body trembled, screaming in protest, and my vision blurred at the edges, but I would not falter. I could feel Andrew, Marcus, and Ronan fighting their way towards me, their spirits lending strength to mine. Their howls, though distant, were a rallying cry in the chaos. Meanwhile, I reached out with my spirit, a mental hand stretching into the maelstrom of corrupted energy. My voice, though unspoken, was a clear, unwavering beacon in the chaos. "Come to me," I projected, my will a sharpened blade. "I am the last moon. I am the darkness you seek. I am the power you crave. Come and be undone." I was offering myself as a vessel, a conduit, a sacrifice, because this was the only way to heal the blight. The effect was instantaneous, terrifying. The tide of the corrupted Stonecrest shifters, which had been focused on overwhelming the Black Hollow defenders, faltered. They hesitated, their glowing, mindless eyes turning towards me. They were drawn by the irresistible pull of my summons, by the overwhelming concentration of blight energy I was now radiating, amplified by the sliver of darkness within my own soul. Not only that, but their howls, once filled with rage, now held a strange, confused whine. They surged towards me, a ravening horde of twisted, monstrous forms. Their howls were a chorus of insatiable hunger, of mindless fury, because they were drawn to the power I now held. I stood my ground, my heart pounding, my body trembling, but my spirit unyielding. I was a lone wolf, standing against an army of monsters. My only weapons were my courage, my love for my pack, and the ancient, dangerous magic I was about to unleash. As the silence stretched, I could hear their claws scraping on the stone, their ragged breathing. When her name left his lips, Andrew's voice, raw with desperation, cut through the approaching roar of the corrupted shifters. "Selena! No!" He knew what I was about to do. He knew the cost. But I had to. As the first wave of corrupted Stonecrest shifters reached me, their claws tearing, their fangs snapping, I drove Rebecca's staff into the damp earth at my feet. A shockwave of pure white light erupted from the staff, from the moonstone amulet, from the hearthstone, forming a shimmering protective barrier around me. It held back the tide of corrupted flesh, but only just. The strain was immense. The blight hammered against my shield, its malevolent energy seeking to overwhelm me, to corrupt me, to consume me. The sliver of the rogue's darkness within me, that chilling echo of corruption, rejoiced. It surged forward, eager to merge with the overwhelming power of the blight, to claim me, to make me one with the corrupted. But I fought back. I clung to my love, to my light, to the memory of who I was, who I had become. I focused all my will, all my strength, on the moonstone amulet, on Rebecca's staff, on the purifying power of the hearthstone. I transformed them into a spiritual forge, a crucible of transmutation, because I knew this was the only way to save them. I opened myself to the blight, not to succumb to it, but to absorb it, to draw its corrupting essence into the waiting vessel of my own soul, into the purifying crucible of the moonstone amulet and the ancient power of the hearthstone. The pain was unimaginable. A searing, tearing agony ripped through my body, my mind, my spirit. It was as if I were being torn apart, consumed from within by 1,000 ravening mouths. My essence shredded, my identity dissolving in a tide of black, corrosive energy. Her world tilted, spinning wildly, but I held on. Slowly, agonizingly, the tide began to turn. The blight, drawn into me, contained within me, began to change. Its raw, malevolent energy, encountering the ancient, purifying magic of the last moon, the unwavering love of the pack, the unyielding strength of my own spirit, began to lose its coherence, its corrupting power. The darkness was not banished, not destroyed, but neutralized, transformed, rendered inert. As the truth unraveled, the corrupted Stonecrest shifters, their connection to the blight severed, faltered, stumbled. Their monstrous forms flickered, shifted, their eyes losing their malevolent glow, replaced by a dawning, horrified awareness of what they had become, what they had done. Some collapsed, their bodies dissolving into dust. Others, their spirits shattered, simply stood whimpering, broken. The battle was over. I collapsed to the ground, my body racked with pain, my spirit hovering on the brink of oblivion. The last vestiges of the blight faded from me, leaving behind a profound, echoing emptiness, and a single tiny crystalline tear that fell from my wolf eye. A tear that glittered with the light of 1,000 shattered stars. I had done it. I had saved them. But then, Andrew was there. His strong arms encircled me, pulling me close. His face was a mask of anguish, his tears mingling with the blood and grime on my fur. He held me close, his heart breaking as he felt my life force, my vibrant spirit begin to fade, to slip away into the waiting silence of the thinning veil. He buried his face in my fur, inhaling my scent, pine, wild herbs, moonlight, trying to memorize it, to hold on to it before it faded completely. "She can't be gone," he whispered, his voice a hoarse, broken rasp. "She can't be." My world faded.
The silence was a scream. It clawed at my ears, deafening after the roar of battle, the shriek of the blight. My world had just ended. Selena, her body, once vibrant with the fierce fire of the last moon, lay limp in my arms. Her midnight fur, usually so alive, was dull, lifeless. The vibrant spark that had defined her, that had pulled me back from my own torment, was extinguished. My heart, a raw, bleeding wound, convulsed in my chest. I buried my face in her fur, inhaling her scent, pine, wild herbs, moonlight, trying to memorize it, to hold on to it before it faded completely. My tears, hot and desperate, mingled with the blood and grime on her coat. "She can't be gone," I rasped, my voice a broken, guttural sound. "She can't be." But I knew. A chilling certainty pierced through my denial. The life force, the vibrant, indomitable spirit that had been Selena, the last moon, had been extinguished, sacrificed. The surviving Black Hollow warriors, battered and bleeding, gathered around us. Their faces were etched with a mixture of awe and profound, inconsolable sorrow. Marcus, his aged frame stooped with a grief that seemed to have aged him a century in a single night, placed a trembling hand on my shoulder. Lyra knelt beside Selena, her ancient eyes, usually so sharp and wise, now clouded with unshed tears. Her lips moved in a silent, desperate prayer because she refused to give up hope. Ronan, the grizzled war leader, stood sentinel, his massive form a bulwark against the encroaching despair, though his own amber eyes were suspiciously bright. Even the surviving Stonecrest shifters, those who had been freed from the Blight's corruption by Selena's sacrifice, seemed to sense the enormity of what had occurred. They stood at a distance, their forms no longer monstrous but still bearing the grotesque, twisted marks of their ordeal. Their eyes wide and haunted, filled with a dawning, horrified understanding of the atrocities they had committed, their spirits shattered, their future uncertain. They were a broken people, their pack decimated, their alpha consumed by the very darkness he had embraced. The first pale rays of dawn began to filter through the smoke-hazed canopy above, painting the cavern in hues of gray and blood orange. The air, still thick with the scent of battle, of death, of expended magic, slowly began to clear, replaced by the clean, cold scent of the approaching morning. But then, a strange, ethereal light began to emanate from the moonstone amulet on Selena's chest. It grew brighter, stronger, pulsing with a rhythmic, hypnotic beat, like a second ghostly heartbeat. The air in the cavern grew thick, charged, humming with an ancient, powerful magic. The pictograms on the cavern walls, the ones depicting the lineage of the last moon, began to glow with an intense silver light. The spirits of the ancestors, of generations of lore keepers, of alphas, of last moons, seemed to stir, to gather, their presence a comforting warmth, a guiding light in the oppressive darkness of our grief. My heart leaped with a wild, desperate hope. I knelt beside Selena, my hand reaching out to touch the amulet. As his fingers brushed against the cool, smooth stone, a jolt of energy, of pure, untainted life force, surged through me, through her, through the hearthstone itself. Selena's body twitched. A faint, shallow breath like the flutter of a bird's wing escaped her lips. Her eyelids flickered. A collective gasp, a choked cry of disbelief, of dawning, incredulous hope, swept through the assembled pack. The light from the amulet intensified, engulfing Selena in its soft silver glow. The fragment of the rogue's darkness, that chilling sliver of ice that had lodged within her, seemed to recoil from the purifying light, to shrink, to dissipate. Not banished, but integrated, transformed. Its malevolent energy neutralized, its potential for harm nullified, its essence absorbed into the vast ancient power of the last moon, adding a new unexpected depth, a profound understanding of the delicate balance between light and shadow to her own spirit. And then, with a deep, shuddering breath, Selena's eyes, the color of a stormy sky, opened. They were no longer dull, lifeless. They were clear, luminous, filled with a wisdom, a power, a resilience that transcended anything we had seen before. She was still Selena, our Selena, but she was also more, the last moon reborn, forged anew in the crucible of sacrifice, her spirit tempered, her power amplified, her connection to the ancient magic, to the heart of her pack, absolute. A joyous, triumphant howl, a sound of pure, unadulterated relief, of overwhelming gratitude erupted from the pack, shaking the very foundations of the den, a testament to the miracle we had just witnessed. What followed was a wave of relief so powerful, it made the cavern itself seem to sigh. My face was wet with tears, my heart overflowing with a love so profound, so fierce it threatened to consume me. I gathered Selena into my arms, holding her close, my body trembling with the aftershocks of fear and overwhelming relief. "Selena," I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. You came back. You came back to me." She smiled, a faint, weary smile, but her eyes, when they met mine, shone with an unwavering love, a deep, resonant understanding. "I will always come back to you, Andrew," she whispered, her voice weak but clear. "I will always come back to our pack." She had walked through the fire, faced the abyss, embraced the darkness, and emerged not unscathed, but transformed. Her spirit tempered, her power refined, her love for her pack, for her mate, an unbreakable, eternal flame. Marcus and Ronan, both bearing the marks of the brutal battle, approached. Their expressions were a mixture of awe and profound gratitude. Lyra knelt beside Selena, her ancient eyes shining with unshed tears, her gnarled hand gently clasping Selena's. "The last moon has fulfilled the prophecy," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "The darkness has been banished. The balance has been restored." The victory, though still bearing the scars of its terrible cost, was no longer a hollow, aching void. It was a testament to the enduring power of sacrifice, of love, of the unbreakable bonds of pack. The surviving Stonecrest shifters, those who had been freed from the Blight's corruption by Selena's sacrifice, stood at a distance. Their forms were no longer monstrous, but they still bore the grotesque, twisted marks of their ordeal. Their eyes, wide and haunted, filled with a dawning, horrified understanding of the atrocities they had committed. Their spirits shattered, their pack decimated, their alpha consumed by the very darkness he had embraced. They were a broken people, their future uncertain. Marcus, with a mixture of weariness and hope, made a difficult, controversial decision. He offered sanctuary to the broken Stonecrest survivors, a place within Black Hollow's territory under our protection, but also under our watchful eye. It was an act of mercy, of strategic foresight, because a weakened, desperate pack on our borders could easily become a source of future conflict. On the other hand, it was a risk. The taint of the Blight, though seemingly purged from the individuals, lingered like a faint, sickly shadow, a potential for future corruption. Some in our pack, still raw from their losses, still haunted by Kaelin's betrayal, resisted this decision, their fear and anger overriding their compassion. But then, Selena, speaking with a quiet authority that brooked no argument, reminded them of our own brush with annihilation, of the fragility of our survival, of the ancient shifter creed that valued pack community above all else. "We were all on the precipice," she told them, her voice resonating with the wisdom of one who had faced the abyss and returned. The Blight did not discriminate. It sought only to consume. To show mercy now, to offer sanctuary, is not a sign of weakness, but of strength. It is a testament to our resilience, to our enduring spirit. Her words, backed by my unwavering support and Marcus's weary authority, slowly began to sway the doubters. A fragile, uneasy truce settled between the two packs, a shared existence born of mutual trauma, and a desperate, flickering hope for a future free from the shadows that had nearly destroyed them both.
The healing would be long, the rebuilding arduous, the physical scars on the land, the deeper, more insidious wounds on the collective spirit of the two packs. Black Hollow and the broken remnants of the Stonecrest were slow to heal. The threat of the Shadow Blight, though diminished, still lingered, a potential poison in the wider world. But then, under the watchful gaze of the fading blood moon, surrounded by the joyous, grateful howls of my pack, I knew that we would face whatever came next together. Years passed, marked by the turning of seasons, by the ebb and flow of moonlight on the ancient stones of Black Hollow. I had fully embraced my role as lorekeeper and healer. My days were filled with the quiet, demanding work of mending. I moved between Rebecca's house, which had become a sanctuary of knowledge and healing, and the den, where the two packs were slowly, cautiously learning to coexist. The Moonstone amulet was a constant, warm presence against my skin, its power a steady, reassuring hum guiding my intuition, amplifying my abilities. The sliver of darkness I had absorbed, once a source of chilling unease, had settled within me not as a taint, but as a profound, almost sorrowful understanding of the shadows. It gave me an empathy for the broken Stonecrest shifters, a patience for their lingering trauma, their fear, their shame. I could see the echoes of the Blight within them, the ghostly tendrils of corruption that still clung to their spirits, and I worked tirelessly, gently, to help them cleanse themselves, to reclaim their true shifter nature. It was a slow, arduous process, demanding all of my strength, all of my compassion, but with each small victory, each flicker of light rekindled in a haunted pair of eyes, I felt a quiet sense of purpose, of fulfillment. Andrew, now a de facto alpha alongside a still grieving but resolute Marcus, bore the heavy responsibility of leading 2 fractured packs through harsh winters and uncertain futures. His love for me was his anchor, his sanctuary. In the quiet, stolen moments we shared, usually late at night by the dying embers of the fire in Rebecca's living room, he would shed the burdens of leadership, the warrior's mask, and become simply Andrew, the man who loved me with a fierce, unwavering devotion. Our mating, though unformalized by pack ritual, was an undeniable truth, a bond forged in fire and sacrifice, recognized and respected by all. We were 2 halves of a whole, alpha and lorekeeper, warrior and healer, our strengths complementing each other, our love a quiet, steady flame in the midst of the lingering shadows. We even journeyed beyond Black Hollow, a desperate pilgrimage into a world still teetering on the brink of shadow. We found other packs, some ravaged by the blight, others cowering in fear. We encountered suspicion, hostility, and the chilling, insidious tendrils of the spreading darkness. But then, we also found courage, resilience, and pockets of unwavering light. We met other lore keepers, descendants of ancient lines, their knowledge fragmented but their spirits still holding a flicker of the old magic. I, with my quiet wisdom, my profound empathy, and the undeniable power of the last moon, wove these disparate threads together, sharing Rebecca's legacy, rekindling forgotten alliances, forging a fragile network of resistance against the encroaching blight. The cure I had discovered, the dangerous sacrificial transmutation of the blight's essence, had been tested, refined, adapted. We did not eradicate the blight entirely, but we contained it, pushed it back, creating bastions of light, of healing, and then, hope. One crisp autumn morning, when the scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves hung heavy in the air and the forest of Black Hollow blazed with the fiery colors of the turning season, Andrew and I returned home. We were no longer the hesitant lorekeeper and the burdened alpha who had set out on a desperate quest. We were legends in our own right, our names whispered with awe and reverence in packs scattered across distant territories. Black Hollow had changed in our absence. Marcus, his spirit finally finding rest, had passed peacefully in his sleep, his legacy secure. Ronan, his warrior days behind him, now served as a respected elder, his stories of our journey already becoming the stuff of pack legend. Lyra, her ancient eyes still bright with a fierce, unwavering spirit, continued to guide the young, to nurture the traditions, her wisdom a living link to our past, our future. The den was no longer a place of fear or suspicion. It was a thriving, vibrant community. Black Hollow and Stonecrest shifters, now fully integrated, their shared trauma, their shared survival having forged an unbreakable bond between them. The cubs of both lines tumbled together, their playful yelps and growls a joyous symphony, a promise of a future free from the shadows that had once threatened to consume them. Rebecca's house, lovingly tended by Lyra in my absence, welcomed us back with its familiar scent of old books, dried herbs, and the faint lingering aroma of ancient magic. It was a sanctuary, a haven, a place where we could finally shed the burdens of our journey, the weight of our legend, and simply be Selena and Andrew, mates, partners, lovers. One evening, as a full moon, clear and silver, rose over the silent, watchful pines, Andrew and I stood in the hidden grove before the ancient oak, its branches spread wide like welcoming arms. The moonstone amulet, its light now a soft, steady glow, pulsed gently against my skin. Rebecca's staff leaned against the moss-covered stones, its power dormant but ever-present. We were not alone. Gathered around us, their faces upturned to the luminous moon, were the members of our pack, Black Hollow and Stonecrest united, their voices rising in a harmonious, joyful howl, a song of gratitude, of resilience, of a peace hard-won, deeply cherished. I looked at Andrew, his silver eyes luminous in the moonlight, reflecting the love, the adoration, the profound, unwavering devotion that had been my anchor, my strength through all the storms, all the battles, all the sacrifices. He reached for my hand, his fingers twining with hers, their bond a silent, unbreakable promise. The wolf within the mirror looked out with eyes that had seen both the deepest darkness and the most radiant light, and had found in the delicate, ever-shifting balance between them not just survival, but a profound, enduring peace. The legacy of the last moon was not one of power or prophecy, but of love, of sacrifice, of the unwavering belief in the possibility of healing, of redemption, of a future where the forest could breathe anew. The scent of pine and damp earth, the crackle of the pack bonfire under the full moon, the taste of blood after a hunt, the sting of icy wind carrying the scent of danger or a potential mate. These were no longer just elements of a story or even just the fabric of my life. They were the rhythm of a world reborn, a world saved, a world where the heart finally had found its true, enduring north. And as the last howl of the pack faded into the starlit silence of the forest, I, Selena, the last moon, knew with a certainty that resonated in the very core of my being that this was not an ending, but a new beginning. A beginning forged in moonlight, tempered by sacrifice, and blessed by the enduring power of a love that had, against all odds, brought us home. The forest breathed anew, and in its breath, Selena and Andrew found their forever.